In all my tournament bass fishing, I can't remember a single person I've met that doesn't love to see a bass blow up on a topwater bait. There's a lot of different types of topwaters. You have your popping baits, your walking baits like this one right here that are going to walk from side to side and twitch in the water. And then you have your traditional buzz bait. All of them work really well, but in my opinion, this topwater walking bait is the best bait you can pick if you're fishing a lake that has a lot of shad in it. A lot of bait fish like gizzard shad or threadfin shad. Something about the way that spook twitches on the surface and runs from side to side. The bass think it's running away, the bass think it's getting away from them, and they will just come up and hammer this bait. Now, the time of year I like to throw a walking bait is going to be typically spring and then again in the fall. It's a pretty fast moving approach. You can slow it down and make it have big slow walks from side to side, but it's generally going to be a pretty fast moving bait. And so when that water's in the 60 to 75 degree range in the spring, that's a great time to throw it. And again in the fall, as the water cools back down, the bass are going to come up shallow and they will absolutely crush topwater walking bait. I'd pick your size of bait based on the average forage in the lake you fish. If your lake, your home lake, or the lakes you fish have small bait fish in them, like maybe the Coosa River or something like that. I live in Alabama, so that's an easy one to relate. A lot of the times I'll go with a little bit smaller one. If I'm fishing a lake like Lake Gunnersville or up on the Tennessee River, they have giant gizzard shad. So this big bait right here is going to trigger those bass a little bit better, and they're just a little bit more used to seeing it. Now don't get me wrong, they will eat a big spook like this on other lakes, even if there aren't that many big bait fish in them, but that's just because bass are mean and they just like to eat things. So the right rod, reel, and line is super important if you're fishing with a topwater walking bait. You want to have a rod that's not too hard to work, so generally a 7-foot to maybe a 7.3 is going to be the length of rod I like, and I like it to have a medium action. So when that bass grabs this bait, if they don't get the hooks just right, it won't rip the treble hooks out of their mouth. Now the reel I use is going to be a 6.6 to 1, or you can bump it up a little bit to like a 7 to 1 or 7.3 to 1 if you want to be able to work that bait really fast and pick up that line as you're working it. And then the key to working this bait is all about the cadence. You got to have the right cadence. And so go out in the swimming pool or out on the lake and just practice making that bait walk back and forth just like this. And when you pop it, you're going to find that there's a cadence. You can keep doing it the whole time, boom, 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 and it'll just keep walking back. And that's when those bass, when it gets in a good steady cadence, are going to come up and crush this bait. Now, with any topwater bait, you want to use monofilament. I basically use fluorocarbon for all of my subsurface baits, but monofilament is the key with a topwater bait like this walking bait. And I'm going to pick 15-pound test monofilament. I like the 15-pound test because it gives me a little extra strength if I hook a big bass and I don't want him to pull and break my line. But get the right line, the right reel, and if you haven't thrown a topwater bait, this is a great one to try, and it is just so fun to see a bass come up and eat a bait off the surface. And if you're a beginning angler, catch one bass on a topwater and see if you can't, if you can stop fishing after that. These things are absolutely addicting, and there's no better, more fun way to catch a big bass than on a topwater.